The Global Business Summit was held recently in the national capital to celebrate the present and anticipate the future. Since its inception in 2015, the Global Business Summit has emerged as Asia's premier meeting place where global thought leaders and experts congregate to discuss ideas and actions for the future. It is an unparalleled gathering where we not only reflect on the past and present, but also anticipate the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead in the ever-evolving global business landscape. The gala event was graced by the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi. During his address from the podium of ET NOW GBS, PM Modi proudly announced that the world has now reposed its trust in India and this is India's time.
देवी और सज्जनों, आप ध्यान देंगे तो हमारे हर बजट में आपको 4 प्रमुख फैक्टर्स नजर आएंगे। पहला, कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर के रूप में रिकॉर्ड प्रोडक्टिव खर्च। दूसरा, वेलफेयर स्कीम्स पर अनप्रेसिडेंटेड निवेश। तीसरा, वेस्टफुल एक्सपेंडिचर पर कंट्रोल। और चौथा, फाइनेंशियल डिसिप्लिन। इन 4 बातों को आपने बराबर देखा होगा। हमने इन चारों विषयों में संतुलन बिठाया और चारों विषयों में ही तय लक्ष्य प्राप्त करके दिखाए। आज कुछ लोग हमसे पूछते हैं ये काम हमने किया कैसे। इसके कई तरीके से मैं जवाब दे सकता हूं और उनमें से एक अहम तरीका रहा है मनी सेव्ड इज मनी अर्न्ड का मंत्र।
ET NOW Global Business Summit has witnessed many thought leaders and industry stalwarts who are writing India's new growth story. Sukant Mishra, Managing Director of Octagon International, was one such leader who, along with other business leaders, discussed on the topic of business transformation and the rise of emerging enterprises. Here are some takeaways from his session.
With the huge population and decent economic growth, there are a lot of emerging businesses and the innovation that are happening in India. When I say emerging businesses, what are the aspects which are coming to their mind? Let's start with that.
Emerging businesses, the things what comes to my mind is definitely innovation, disruption, success, failure, frustration, creative ideas, creative solutions, and definitely I guess 80,000 startups which got registered last year.
We help in nation building, in planning and designing of infrastructure. Why we still consider ourselves emerging is because of the uncertain times that we have.
I'm going to look at it slightly differently, and I agree to what all they have said. But to put it in a perspective, if I may ask, can anybody tell me that in 1987, which economy was bigger, India or China? And there where the answer lies, that just in 30 years, a country has become almost 6 times our economy. And that was the emergence of certain industry, which has brought this revolutionary change. That means regulatory framework, incentives by government, necessities, dynamic changes, technologies, different methods, our foreign policies, and all together creation of new market and industries.
And I think India has the biggest opportunity in the world, given there are, if I'm not wrong, 900 million people under 35-year-olds that are the kind of people that can acquire the skills to become 900 million emerging businesses in their own.
If you actually look at the context in India, right, you have to look at the fact that this is a great opportunity time, right? India has democracy, diversity. From an environment ecosystem perspective, it's just the best time to be an emerging enterprise.
It's so natural that we compare right now because the power shift is happening from West to Asian countries. If you look at today India, we are talking about we are almost reaching 1 billion internet user. We have already crossed the leading wave on digital India. 63 million MSMEs in India. We are contributing 30% plus to GDP. 52% of the total exports comes from MSME. 60% of that 52% comes from rural areas of India. And that tells you that it is not only about quick commerce, digital and all, it is also about agriculture. It is also about edtech. It is also about manufacturing. How many people would know that we are number one in diamond, we are leading in rice, iron and steel, one of the largest exporter in the world today. And this has happened not yesterday. This has been our industry of strengths for long, long time. So hence, if I look at MSMEs, they are the spine, backbone of any country right now. And if I look at China, the only differential with their 38 million MSMEs are the tax collections from MSMEs. But the difference lies, guys, in the way we have operated our MSMEs. In China, when this whole boom in early 2000s came in, companies were more focused on creating global edge, whereas we were focusing more on improving our domestic consumption. What can be done better for India? Whereas China's outlook was what can be done globally. And hence, in last 2 decades, we saw that dominance. Today, they are the manufacturing capital of the world, and we want to become the digital capital of the world.
Sukant Mishra also spoke in an exclusive interview with ET Now, where he opined that with the right support, Indian MSMEs can unlock their true potential and significantly contribute to economic growth. Take a look.
Sukant, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, sir.
Thank you so much. So, it's been a wonderful experience so far, and I'm very happy to be here.
You have a lot of respect in terms of your outlook when it comes to the MSME industry as well as the startup sector. And I'd love your take on where you see the sector going. You know, specifically with MSMEs, their contribution to job generation is fairly obvious. They've made their mark in terms of contribution to GDP. But what more do you wish for this sector, and what do you see happening?
So as I see MSME, it is very important for us to understand what exactly MSME is. And MSME is the spine, or now converting more in towards the heart of any country. Majority of the countries in the world sees growth, innovation, and it's the main driving factor for countries to improve and grow. If I talk about India as per se, India is doing phenomenal in MSME segment. Our 30% of the GDP almost comes from MSME. Our 48% of the growth in GDP comes from MSME. Our 60% of exports comes from MSME.
Right.
So India is doing a lot of right things. Obviously, there is always a scope of growth. We always need to look back and compare ourselves with other countries around us, how they have performed. So in terms of the direction, we are absolutely in the right direction. But in terms of what all can be done, we need to invest more in terms of R&D. We need to invest more in terms of innovation. We need to see how we can smoothen the regulatory framework to help and use this platform which we have created and goes absolutely global.
Well, sir, many of the things you discussed require perhaps better collaboration between the public and the private sector. What do you wish in terms of that collaboration? How can those two sectors better work in tandem to make MSMEs take center stage across this country?
This whole automation of taxes, which is GST,
right?
It was such a phenomenal thing.
Yeah.
And it is really improving the collection of tax. And these revenues are further reinvested into startups, MSMEs, and given back. But this is not the only way we can raise money. We have FDIs coming in play, which now India is looking at very seriously.
Right.
We have investments from the public, and there where the public, capitalists and governments are getting together and converting this capex into opex models, long-term sustained earnings. And this is working wonderful. This is working wonderful for government, infrastructure, and we have seen how globally countries like China have utilized this at best to emerge as one of the successful economies of the world.
Well, sir, you've touched upon MSMEs. I'd like to switch gears now and talk startups, all right? My understanding is that we are the world's third largest startup ecosystem. We have nearly 100,000 startups, over 100 unicorns, and the list goes on and on. What more can be done to sort of further strengthen that ecosystem?
Startups have been very close to heart, and India have shown huge growth, especially in last 4 years, minus the very last year, where we have created a lot of unicorns. 2 years, 21, 22, we created 48 unicorns. We are around 116 unicorns right now with the $360 billion valuation. So this is phenomenal. But we cannot get complacent here. And we need to continue this stream. We are the country now going to be touching almost 1 trillion people using internet, which is going to be a game-changing platform for us.
Right.
And India has already excelled in digital areas where we are absolutely dominating. We are the country which is leading in UPI payment gateways. If I give you a number, even next best to us is US, which is doing $3 billion transactions a year, whereas India is doing 10 billion transactions a month.
Right.
So this is the kind of lead we are having. AI, the new technology which we are seeing now. Again, India has a very good advantage because of the technological skill sets we produce. We have a lower cost of human capital. So all these things sums together, puts up a way very ahead and leading against this whole upcoming swing of the world in startup arena. However, we need to look at manufacturing seriously. So as I always see, between India and China, China used domestic as well as foreign trade separately and focused on both the streams, which gave them double or triple returns back. Whereas India was busy doing a lot of domestic improvements.
Right.
And it is the time now we have to look international. So focus on international revenues and improve our domestic innovations and supply better products. That's how I look at startups.
You've mentioned so many bright spots, right? Whether it be across the MSME sector or across the startup community, reasons for optimism. What might you outline as causes for concern or areas of much needed improvement for our ecosystems to blossom to that next level?
So what has happened in last decade because of this boom of startups? A lot of valuations have come into the game.
Right.
And a lot of investors and a lot of these young entrepreneurs are now looking for valuations. The first question you ask them, and the answer is, what is my exit?
Right. When is my exit and what is my exit?
And
right.
the moment you talk about exit, the very sustenance of the business is questioned.
Absolutely.
So we really need to change that thought process from exit to sustainability, long term, and actually be a purposeful startup. We have seen some downtrend also in last 3 years. India have seen huge drop in a lot of unicorns valuations.
Right.
And primarily coming from there because product fit is very important. We can be too early. We can be too materialistic in looking at the exit. We are sacrificing the cost of acquisition of a customer versus cost we can actually realize from the customers. So we need to be very careful in that. India also has to help. The major challenge which we are facing is the finance.
Yes.
So especially in SME segment, finance is something which is very much required. So, but latest initiative by Nandan Nilekani is OECN, I think, which is working and which is now in play.
Yes.
So these are the finance challenges which I see. Innovation is another challenge which I see. Indians are the architect of global companies, if you look at broadly. 400 top companies out of 1,500 companies are run or managed by Indians. But we are still lacking way behind in creating those companies.
Right.
So this is where we have to look at R&D expenditure. So R&D, microfinance, and this regulatory framework, if we can smoothen it, better it,
Sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit.
So Sukant, our MSMEs are maturing in large part due to effective policy frameworks. But where they're perhaps falling short is when it comes to remaining agile, right? Adapting to technology, prioritizing innovation. All of that seems to be on the startup side of the aisle. What's required to make that a part of the past?
Obviously, the use of technology is playing a very crucial role. And we have already started using technology. We are Digital India. And again, in Digital India, this AI is coming in. IoT-based products have come in. So in terms of usage of technology, of course, the degree of usage of technology has to improve.
Right.
And we as Indian are a leading player in technology world globally. And I'm very happy to share that India should be a dominant country in the world for use of technology in MSMEs. You talk about EdTech, Agrotech, FinTech, all these sectors, India is coming up very big way. The only thing is that we need to spread it from main urban areas to rural side. That's where I look at it.
Well, Sukant, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
Have a great summit.
Thank you so much.
Next in line was another brainstorming session titled Power Shifts to Profits, the Age of Meritocracy, where the president of Kyndryl India, Lingaraju Saukar, along with the doyens of the industry put forth his opinion. Here are some snapshots from the session.
Let me come to you, Hina, and tell us about how approaches to profitability are really shifting in today's context and how India is doing it differently, if at all.
Well, first of all, I think there is a huge accent on profitability, right? I mean, I see it all the time. We are a listed company in India, right? Investors and then shareholders for dividend. Basically, I don't think that, there is a difference. I think everyone needs to go on this topic.
I think there's been a big spotlight on how do global businesses build supply chain resiliency and adaptability.
Disruption comes with a fair bit of cost in the short run. I think to master the art of being profitable and be disruptive, the first word that comes to my mind is empower.
Fundamentally, to me, profit is about, at all levels, customer, value. He or she should be seeing profit in terms of what they are purchasing.
Kyndryl got spun out from IBM as a services division, separate company all by itself now for the last 2 years. And the nature of what we do right now is IT services to customers. So we had to move from being IP selling organization to a customer-centric organization. So we had to change the management structure itself first. So what we did is we took out the entire Asia-Pacific layer. We brought down 60% of the management decision-making nodes away. So the moment you take decision-making nodes away, then things move faster.
So technology is making it that much easier. How have you pursued it to kind of find that talent and to bring that talent in? How do you approach it? How do you change with the times when organizations have ground realities to factor in and technology as an enabler?
Okay, I think very clearly the industry that we are in, technology has been a greatest enabler and also greatest disruptor for how we look at things. So for example, in our own organization, we brought in through automation and technologies, we were able to release 7,500 people from the job that they were doing to acquire new skills to do other things and brought in automation. That's one part that's constantly going to continue. Picking on what Tapan said, right, about the age and dimension of workforce. Today in our industry, the tech industry, you have people in their early 20s to the late 50s all coexisting doing work. I think one thing that the new generation brings across the table is a very inquisitive, different way of looking at things. And picking on Abhimanyu's point, right, as long as they feel connected to the purpose, you're aligned. Otherwise, you can't get them aligned to anything else but the purpose. But also the willingness of the senior generation to do reverse mentoring and learn from this thing also spurs them across. So we've seen a combination of all of these things. How do you create the right environment to foster this two-way exchange of work gets done? This thing about work from home and work from office depends on which city you come from. I come from Bangalore. And the only topic of discussion becomes traffic and how you do. So I think that's not a big issue. But of course, working together certain times of the thing does foster collaboration, but wouldn't want to insist that at this point in time as a primary.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this discussion. Pleasure having you with us.
After the invigorating panel discussion, Lingaraju Saukar, in an exclusive interview, echoed that transitioning from IT-centric to customer-centric was crucial. Take a look.
Sir, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Sure, thank you for your time here as well.
And so there's a lot of conversation at this very summit around technology transformation. But for technology transformation to even be effective, it has to be pervasive. It has to be scalable. What role does a digital-first approach play in making that vision a reality?
I think very clearly the first thing you've got to realize is that we are in India. India has taken a significant leap forward in digital. One is, while we took time to catch up on the physical infrastructure, but the way digital infrastructure has leaped forward has laid a very solid foundation.
Absolutely.
And it touches every aspect of a citizen's life, both whether he's a professional or whether it's on his personal needs.
Sure.
And you can see that in the India stack, the Tech8 stack that we built across, whether it's Aadhaar, whether it is the whole UPI stack and everything else that goes around with it. So given that as a base platform, there is no choice but for organizations and industries to build a digital-first approach, because everything is digital in the ecosystem that you touch with. So that's one aspect. The second aspect of it is the skilled workforce itself, right? We are very fortunate to be at a time zone in India where the demographic dividend of India is really an advantage.
Right.
And if you look at our own firm, in our own workforce, we have a workforce which cuts across a multi-generational workforce. There's a very experienced set of people on one side. There's also the new joinees or not on the millennials, the Gen Z and so on who are joining in, right?
Right.
So you are dealing with a workforce that by default is digitally native. So hence the need for technology and systems to first start with a digital-first approach, not only to look at what the environment outside is, which is the government and structures, the way businesses are getting transformed because of digital transformation, and your own workforce, you're having a very divergent spread of workforce. So how you look at the skills and capabilities, bringing all of these three together makes it all the more imperative to start with the digital first and then take it through.
Well, sir, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, and we look forward to what lies ahead at Kyndryl India.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time here as well.
The 8th glorious edition of the Global Business Summit, a flagship initiative of the Times Group, has brought together visionaries, thought leaders, heads of state, policy makers to cohesively demonstrate India's potential and technological prowess to the world.
This is our digital public infrastructure. I'm sure you would have known about it. I wouldn't go in detail. I just want to have your attention on the structure, the architecture. The architecture is very unique because this is an architecture of public-private partnership, where the government put the investment in creating one platform, and in this platform, we added close to 500 plus banks, close to 50 million merchants, many startups, and about 335 million users. That number has gone to 400 million. We'll update it.
On the issue of fake news, the government, of course, has announced the fact-check unit. Recently, the Bombay High Court has asked a third judge to opine on the same. And, of course, it's asked the government to go ahead and establish or empowering the central government to establish a fact-check unit. In light of what the Bombay High Court has said, there's been a lot of divided opinion as to what really constitutes the fact-check. There are those who are saying, how can the government sit in judgment about a news in which the government itself may be a party?
I think some of these issues, Madhav, the debate is driven by people who really haven't understood it fully and still dive in and opine. You know, the internet, as somebody said, is now become a place where the Nobel Prize winner and the village idiot both have to talk to each other as if they were equals. So there is a lot of that going on. The fact-check unit of the government was certainly not meant to be anything other than a help for those platforms who wanted to label misinformation but did not have any other way to label the misinformation except with help from the government. So this was about simply a way of making sure platforms were getting the help from the government to decide what is patently false and what is not patently false.
But would you be okay with state governments, for instance, setting up? We've seen that happen as well recently.
Look, I mean, I'm okay with you setting it up either, as well. But my point is that under the law, the internet can be regulated by the government of India. And the statutory powers for regulation come only to the government of India. So if a state government wants to set up a fact-check unit which will advise platforms on what is right and wrong about its government work or some piece of information about the government, they are welcome to do so. We have independent private fact-check units even today.
The ET Now Global Business Summit 2024, presented by the Times Group, has been at the forefront of driving a singular agenda for scripting economic change by connecting the building blocks of economics for India and the globe. ET Now GBS serves as a conduit for corporates and governments to secure investments from domestic and international allies that will become a part of India's growth story.